What's a silent red flag that you didn't notice until later in the relationship? Story 1. My relationship ended the day I lost my job. I figured my relationship was solid until the Tuesday I walked out of my office carrying that little cardboard box they give you when your position disappears. On the drive home, I rehearsed how I would break the news. My girlfriend always said we were a goal-oriented couple, so I expected a pep talk and maybe a cheap bottle of wine. At first she delivered. She hugged me, pulled up job boards, and insisted we'd treat the next few weeks like a project. Still, a knot formed in my stomach. Looking back, it had been there since our second date, when she sent back a cocktail because the lime slice looked tired. She had laughed it off, calling herself picky. I decided it meant she had standards, and that I must meet them. The first crack showed that same night. I was drafting a new resume, and she wandered in, sighing about how our streaming subscriptions were suddenly luxuries. It sounded like a joke, so I let it slide. Over the next week, her support got shinier and thinner, like cheap foil. She would hand me a mug of coffee, then comment that it was nice I could sleep in while she fought rush hour traffic. I overheard her on the phone with her sister saying she felt like the only adult in the apartment right now. When I walked in, she lowered her voice and asked if I'd mind giving her privacy. The way she's already making him feel guilty about sleeping in after 1 week. This isn't support, this is sabotage. Friday evening, we were meant to meet friends for dinner, something low-key. She stood in front of the mirror and, without looking at me, asked whether I planned to wear those shoes from the bargain outlet. I told her money was tight. She said, still facing the mirror, that dating was an investment, and investors expect returns. That did it. I reminded her of the server she'd dressed down last winter for mixing up her steak sides. She'd claimed then she just hated incompetence. I asked if losing a job automatically made me incompetent. She rolled her eyes and said I was twisting her words, that I was looking for a villain because it's easier than looking for work. When I asked why she had told her sister she might move back in with their parents, she snapped that I was eavesdropping and making this about feelings instead of finances. She really called their relationship an investment while he's jobless. That's absolutely brutal. The argument spiraled from there, her insisting she was practical, me realizing practicality felt a lot like contempt. Around midnight, I packed a gym bag, promised to cover my half of next month's rent, and texted my brother for couch space. 6 months later, I was settling into a lower-paying but calmer role when a mutual friend mentioned she'd started seeing an investment banker. Apparently, she had already warned him she doesn't tolerate lateness. I just laughed and asked the friend to pass along my old resume template. He might need it one day. Passing along that resume template is perfect. He's definitely going to need it with someone like that. Story 2. I dated the perfect woman until she started talking. I dated her for 8 months. The first stretch was rom-com good, handwritten notes in my lunch, playlists for my commute, a 2 a.m. ride across town just to drop off cough drops when I was sick. I kept telling my friends I'd hit the jackpot. The first time my stomach dipped was at our weekly poker night. My buddy said he'd accepted a high school history gig, and she smiled. That's awesome! Passion over paycheck, right? It sounded supportive, but the table got quiet. On the drive home, she called herself Just Honest, and I nodded along. A couple weeks later, a waitress mixed up our coffees. My girlfriend laughed and said, "It's fine. Long shifts make everyone sloppy." The waitress forced a grin. I left a big tip. My girlfriend squeezed my arm, told me I was sweet, and the knot in my chest loosened. That little arm squeeze after a swipe at the waitress feels like wrapping barbed wire in velvet. Then came my friend's barbecue. She ran a hand over his dented Civic and said, "I had this model in college. Keeping it for nostalgia?" He chuckled, but it stung. After that, group texts started showing up without a +1. Trying to mend fences, I hosted game night. Front and centre on the coffee table was the model ship I'd just finished, something my grandpa taught me to build. She set her purse down, nudged the bow, and said light as air, "I love that you still make time for hobbies. Helps you switch off, huh?" It was the tone, like I was finger painting in the garage. The room went still. Nobody looked surprised except me. The whole room freezing says it all. It's not a joke if nobody's laughing, especially the target. When everyone left, I told her that shit mattered, same as the friends she kept needling. She rolled her eyes, said I was too sensitive, and reminded me she was only teasing. I realised I was about to argue for the right to care about my own life, so I ended it. No shouting, just, I need someone who respects the stuff I care about. She predicted I'd come crawling back. I spent the next hour checking the rigging. One sail was loose, easy fix. Next morning I called my best friend and apologised for being dense. He laughed. "Movie night at 7, don't be late." 9 months on, Fridays are crowded again. The ship sits in a glass case, and whenever I meet someone new, I watch how they treat the server before I decide anything else. Fridays overflowing with friends and a ship you can proudly display beat tiptoeing around thinly disguised digs any day. Choosing respect as your first filter is a rock-solid compass. Story 3. My dad had a heart attack, so my girlfriend went to a concert. I used to brag that my girlfriend and I never argued. We dated a little over a year, and I figured that meant we were perfect together. The truth was simpler. I did the bending, so nothing ever snapped. The pattern looked harmless at first. One morning, her coffee shop was out of vanilla syrup, and she called me on the verge of tears. I missed half a meeting talking her down. A week later, a coworker made a throwaway joke about her shoes, and I spent my evening helping her script the perfect comeback. Finals week? I bailed on a camping trip to sit at her kitchen table and quiz her until 2 a.m. I told myself that's what good boyfriends do and assumed she would do the same for me. Then I got the call no one wants. Late Thursday, my mum said my dad had a massive heart attack and was being rushed into surgery. I stuffed clothes in a backpack and rang my girlfriend, looking for the same steady voice I'd given her 100 times. This is when you need your person to just drop everything. She sounded sorry, then reminded me she had concert tickets for that night and was already in the rideshare with friends. I'll text you after the show, she said. I told her which hospital just in case and drove over feeling numb. Friday was a blur of beeping monitors, cold vending machine coffee, and trying to keep my mum from falling apart. I sent my girlfriend quick updates. Hours later, she answered with things like sending good vibes and nothing else. While charging my phone, I opened social media and saw her in the crowd. Big grin, captioned, "Best night ever." I shut the app before I could decide how to feel. Saturday, she finally swung by. She met me in the lobby, handed me a latte, and complained the parking garage cost $20 and the place smelled like disinfectant. 10 minutes in, she checked her watch and said she was late for brunch. Dad was still listed as critical. She was gone before I got back through the security doors. She's acting like a hospital is an inconvenience, not the place your dad is fighting for his life. My jaw just clenched. By Sunday afternoon, he stabilised, and the nurse told us he'd probably pull through. Relief hit me so hard my legs shook. I drove home, exhausted, hoping for a hug and maybe a hot shower that wasn't in a hospital bathroom. She was on my couch scrolling her phone. Without looking up, she asked, "So, he's okay now?" I told her about the 48 hours of machines, the chair I'd slept in, the smell of bleach that wouldn't leave my clothes. Then I asked why she never once asked how I was doing. She stiffened and said she didn't want to crowd me. Hospitals made her anxious, and she figured my family needed space. I reminded her I'd cancelled plans over a bad haircut and a vanilla syrup shortage. She went quiet. I told her we were done and asked her to grab her stuff. Hearing her spin space as an excuse when you've hand-delivered comfort for every small crisis she had feels like a slap in delayed slow motion. That night, I texted the buddies I'd ditched during her finals and admitted I could use company. One replied, "Check your door." They were already on the porch with burritos and a stack of awful action DVDs. That was the silent red flag. A relationship that felt peaceful only because one person kept absorbing all the noise. I stopped doing that, and the peace vanished, along with the girlfriend. Haven't heard from her since she picked up the last of her things the next week, and honestly, that silence feels great. That silence hitting different when it's finally your choice. Story 4. My girlfriend used my biggest fear as a weapon against me. Back when someone on here asks about silent red flags, I always think of my ex from a couple years ago. We dated just over a year, and on paper, everything was flawless. We never argued, ever. I took that as cosmic compatibility, not realising I was the one bending every time there was even a hint of friction. She would smile, tilt her head, and I would cave before a disagreement could happen. I thought that made me lucky. What really sold me was how safe she made me feel when we talked. My dad bailed when I was 12, and I almost never mention him. It is the deepest sore spot I have. One night, curled up on her couch, she asked about it. Not in a nosy way, but softly, like she was lighting candles around a wound instead of poking it. The questions kept coming. What our last conversation was like, whether I feared turning into him, how it shaped my view of family. By the end, I was crying into her hoodie, feeling lighter than I had in years. She held my face and whispered that she didn't deserve someone so open and strong. I swear I floated home. Fast forward to our first anniversary. I had reservations at a tiny Italian place she had been hinting about for weeks. 2 hours before dinner, my mum called. Severe chest pain, ambulance ride, the whole nightmare. I dropped everything and drove straight to the hospital, texting my girlfriend on the way that I had to rain check. That instant brain switch, from planning pasta to racing after an ambulance, feels like getting yanked out of a warm blanket into cold rain. Her reply was one line. "Are you kidding me right now?" I thought she misunderstood, so I called. She picked up and, without waiting, told me I was proving she wasn't a priority, that people make time for what matters and so on. I was running on adrenaline, but I finally pushed back, told her this was serious,
that my mum might be having a heart attack, and I couldn't believe she was angry.
That was the moment the mask slid. She snapped, "This is exactly what your dad did. Always an excuse to skip out when someone needed him." Then she repeated details I had shared in that couch confession, almost verbatim, turning each one into a jab. Unreliable, flaky, no wonder he left. Hearing my biggest fear weaponized by the person I trusted most felt like standing under a collapsing roof. She didn't just cross the line. She mined it for shrapnel and hurled it back. My pulse actually spiked reading that. I hung up without another word. Mum was fine after overnight tests, but the next morning I met my girlfriend for coffee and ended it. I was calm, which seemed to unsettle her more than yelling would have. She tried blaming me, said I made her say it by hurting her first, but I was done. I walked out and blocked her number on the sidewalk. So here's the flag I missed. It wasn't her curiosity. It was the appetite behind it. Real empathy cares about your day-to-day happiness. Counterfeit empathy hoards your pain like ammunition. If someone digs hard for your worst memories early on, press pause and see whether they treat your present with the same care. Curiosity versus appetite. That contrast lands hard, pinning that wisdom to my mental corkboard for every future heart-to-heart. Story 5. My girlfriend told me to FaceTime my dying grandfather. For the first 6 months, she was pure comfort. She showed up at my door with the exact coffee I liked, laughed at every bad pun I made, even told the barista once that I was the smartest guy alive. I soaked it in. The first crack was tiny. We passed a kid scraping away at a violin downtown. Sounded rough, sure. She muttered, just loud enough for me. Hope his parents kept the receipt on those lessons. 2 weeks later, a rideshare driver missed her shortcut. She leaned up, and in her sweetest voice, asked if he could please use the brain God gave him. The second the door shut, she was back to sunshine, joking about traffic. Then it landed closer to home. I dragged her to a board game night with my buddies. One of them misread a rule and she laughed. "Wow, you really make accounting sound hard." Silence. He actually is an accountant. On the drive back, she called my friends harmless but embarrassing and suggested we make those hangouts our thing, not theirs. That microgrenade in front of your friends hits different, the moment you realise the smile has a safety off. Same playbook with my relatives. She'd groan when I mentioned Sunday dinners, saying my family always invents a crisis. I missed 2 gatherings because she planned last-minute us time, and the flattery of being prioritised felt good enough that I let it slide. My hobby is restoring old motorcycles, something my granddad taught me. When I finally rolled a '79 Honda out of the garage, proud as a kid with a science project, she glanced at it, said, "Cute," and switched the conversation to an influencer's wedding she wanted us at. The word cute stung, but I swallowed it. Calling months of work cute, that dismissive little word cuts deeper than any insult. A week later, Dad called. Grandad was in the hospital and fading. The problem? That wedding weekend was prepaid. Hotel, outfits, everything. I told her I had to fly home. She went still, then said, "So you're ditching me for a maybe goodbye?" I said it wasn't a maybe. She answered, "There's always drama with your family. FaceTime like a normal person." That flipped a switch. I said I was going. End of story. She shrugged. "Fine. Burn the money. Don't expect me to babysit your feelings." I left the next morning. She rang twice, sent a dozen texts that got colder each hour, and finally one that just read, "Hope everything's okay." The way she flipped from guilt-tripping to fake concern gave me emotional whiplash, manipulative as hell. Grandad passed Sunday. At the funeral, I blocked her number. Friends later told me she wrote off the breakup as scheduling conflicts. The hotel deposit and outfits? I ate the cost, best money I've ever lost. We dated 9 months total. The red flag wasn't silent. It was right there every time she casually trashed a stranger, a friend, or my family. I was just too busy enjoying the spotlight to recognise I was never special, only next in line. Now, when someone can turn mean on a dime, I don't wait to see where the dime lands. Learning to spot that shiny dime before it flips feels like tuition paid in full, worth every lost deposit. Story 6. I helped her lie to my best friend, then I became her next target. Dating my best friend's ex was a rotten idea, and I knew it even while I was typing those first late-night messages. They split in February. By March, she and I were just talking. By April, we were meeting in parking lots like teenagers. I almost came clean once. My friend texted asking if I wanted wings. I started to type, "Actually, I'm with," then deleted it and blamed a work deadline. That little spike of panic became my new normal. The sneaking itself was addictive. We kept a shared note called alibis: dentist appointment, oil change, helping my sister move. She could improvise on command. One night, my friend rang while she was on my couch. Without blinking, she launched into a story about picking up her grandma at the airport. Terminal, gate number, delayed flight. Before he even said hello. I told myself it just meant she was quick on her feet. She used that talent everywhere. She once fake-sobbed her way out of a speeding ticket by telling the trooper she was rushing to put down her critically ill dog, then celebrated at a drive-thru 5 minutes later. She stiffed a bartender by claiming the card reader double-charged her. I winced, but laughed along, because she wasn't lying to me. Or so I decided. That celebration fries me. She treats lies like party tricks while you're busy grading them on harmless. First crack. She said she was home with the flu, then popped up in the background of a mutual friend's birthday video. When I asked, she flipped it. Why was I stalking social media? Why hadn't I told my buddy the truth yet? I ended up apologizing for distrusting her. I also told her, privately, that I was terrified I might blow an upcoming promotion interview. A few days later, a coworker joked, "Heard you're stressing big time about that interview. Don't overthink it." Only one person knew. That's when it hit me she wasn't just a gifted liar. She weaponized whatever I handed her. Hearing your own secret bounce back from a coworker feels like realizing the walls have ears and they're all hers. The final blow landed in July. She said she had to take a weekend train to Portland for a sick aunt, and even texted me a screenshot of the ticket. Saturday night, I was doom scrolling when my best friend posted a story from a sold-out Firestone show downtown, her favourite band. I nearly kept scrolling, but in the pulsing crowd I recognised a hoodie, mine, on her. My friend's caption was a casual, "Great show," nothing pointed because he had no idea. I stared at the screen for a full minute, then grabbed a resale ticket and a rideshare. Half an hour later, I was at the arena, weaving toward her section. When I finally tapped her shoulder and asked how Portland was, she tried to spin a brand new tale. Turns out the aunt had flown up instead. I must have looked done, because she dropped the act and said, almost bored, "Look, you liked the lying when it was both of us. Why act shocked now?" Oof, that's the mirror nobody orders. She just handed you joint custody of the mess. Couldn't argue. We ended things on the sidewalk outside the venue. We'd been whatever we were for 5 messy months. The fallout was worse than the breakup. Word got around, game nights collapsed, my promotion went to someone else after the gossip swirl, and when I confessed everything to my best friend, he didn't sigh. He swore, called me a backstabber, and walked out. A year later, we only trade stiff nods at mutual events. The quiet red flag wasn't that she lied. It was that she showed me how easily she lied on day one, and I cheered her on. If someone's fluent in deceit for you, assume the language works on you too. Fluent in deceit, line of the year. Hard lesson, co-sign the scam, and the bill will still have your name on it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and check out this video next.